Welcome back, everyone, and get ready because today we are diving into one of the most unbelievable, mind-bending stories in modern coin collecting. A story that starts with an ordinary piece of pocket change, but turns into a jaw-dropping legend of hidden value, rare minting errors, and the thrilling possibility that a simple 1996 p dime, the kind you might find at the bottom of a drawer or buried in an old piggy bank, could be worth an unbelievable $59 million. And throughout this long, deep dive, we are going to explore why collectors whisper about this coin, what unusual and almost impossible set of mistakes could turn it into one of the most valuable modern dimes ever rumored, and how astonishing errors combined with timing and extremely strange minting anomalies can transform something that normally costs 10 cents into a treasure so valuable that it captures the imagination of collectors worldwide. And as we go through this entire script, we will journey through every possibility, every hypothetical error, every mysterious circumstance, every reason that a piece of metal stamped in 1996 at the Philadelphia Mint could reach mythical millionaire status. So settle in and enjoy this extended exploration, because once you hear everything tied to the 1996 p dime's legendary value, you'll never look at loose change the same way again, as we unravel the extraordinary story of how errors, rarity, and the right conditions turn a coin into something worth more than luxury homes, sports cars, and lifetime fortunes combined. And the story always begins at the Philadelphia Mint in 1996, a year when billions of coins were made, but not all coins were made equally, because every so often a combination of misaligned machinery, worn dies, clogged details, improper metal planchets, off-center strikes, double designs, and unexpected anomalies align to produce something so unique that collectors practically fight over it. And when you consider a dime from this year that supposedly carries a value tag of $59 million, you must imagine a specimen so extraordinary that it must include not one error, but a series of cascading mistakes layered on top of each other, forming a 1 in a billion hybrid error coin that defies logic and sits outside the regular expectations of mint production. So let's paint the picture of what could make the 1996 p dime such a staggering rarity, beginning with perhaps the most dramatic kind of error, an off-metal strike, which occurs when a coin is struck on a planchet that was never meant for the denomination at all. And imagine if the 1996 p dime was struck on a gold or platinum planchet accidentally fed into the machine, or perhaps a foreign coin blank left over from a special minting program, something so unusual that it inherently increases its rarity tenfold. And beyond that, consider a double strike, not just a typical one, but a dramatically misaligned double strike where the coin rotates between the first and second strike, creating overlapping images of Roosevelt's profile and the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse, an effect that collectors adore because it demonstrates a catastrophic minting malfunction and results in an unmistakable visual difference that cannot be replicated intentionally without detection, giving it authenticity, mystery, and visual appeal that sends its value soaring. And now add to that the possibility of a dramatic die crack, not a small one, but a lightning bolt-shaped fracture running across Roosevelt's face or across the date, making the coin appear as though it carries a jagged scar formed during the minting process when pressure, age, and heat cause the die to split under stress. And because each die crack is unique, these coins become one-of-a-kind pieces of art. And if you have a dime that pairs a dramatic die crack with an off-metal strike and a double strike, suddenly you have something so incredibly rare that it becomes the stuff of legends, the kind of coin that auction houses would showcase under spotlights, the kind of coin that wealthy collectors would battle over with escalating bids that surpass all logic and elevate the coin into myth. But the 1996 p dime's rumored $59 million price tag doesn't stop with those possibilities alone, because another layer of rarity could exist in the form of a deeply struck overdate error, something that is nearly impossible in modern minting, but not entirely unheard of, where an old die with remnants of a previous year somehow slips into production, and strikes a New Year's coin, and if this happened with a 1996 P dime, and the ghostly remains of a 1995 or even earlier date can be seen beneath the 1996, then we have a powerful anomaly, a signal that an outdated die was reused by mistake, which would be a catastrophic mint oversight and a dream for collectors of extremely rare numismatic oddities. And imagine how much weight this would add to the dime's potential value, because die varieties and overdates are some of the most intensely sought-after errors in U.S. coin history, with a few single coins in the past selling for millions even without the added layers of extraordinary errors we're describing here. And now imagine a combination error involving a broad strike, where the collar that normally holds the planchet in place during minting fails to engage, and the coin spreads out beyond normal boundaries, creating a wider, flatter dime, whose design elements appear stretched toward the rim, and pair that with a clipped planchet error, where a small portion of the coin's edge is missing due to the metal sheet overlapping during blank production, and the coin begins to take on an otherworldly appearance, a physical story of minting chaos frozen in metal that collectors would marvel at. And if all of these errors somehow combined into a single coin, a mythic hybrid of off-metal composition, dramatic double strike, heavy die crack, possible overdate, broad strike, misaligned die clash where unintended impressions strike the fields of the coin, and even a rare missing edge read error where the side of the dime is smooth instead of having the usual vertical grooves, then we now have a theoretical specimen of such unimaginable rarity that collectors could easily justify paying tens of millions, especially if high-grade preservation somehow accompanied these errors, meaning the coin survived decades without wear, still shimmering with its original mint luster, a time capsule of minting disaster preserved in near-perfect condition, a combination so improbable that the value skyrockets beyond any conventional limits. And in addition to all these physical quirks, you must also consider the role of collector psychology, because high-value coins do not simply become valuable through rarity alone, but through the stories that surround them. And the 1996 P dime rumored to be worth $59 million inspires intense fascination because it challenges the assumption that modern coins cannot reach astronomical values, fueling imagination and speculation, pushing collectors and enthusiasts to believe that buried treasures still exist in everyday change, that miracles of minting mishaps are still out there, waiting to be discovered by those lucky few who look closely enough. And this sense of wonder and possibility multiplies the perceived value, because when a coin becomes iconic in conversation, rumor, and legend, it develops a cultural worth that transcends monetary value alone, and the rarity becomes almost secondary to the excitement of the discovery, and people begin to treat the coin not just as metal but as a symbol of chance, luck, and the thrill of possibility, which only pushes demand even higher. And when you combine physical rarity, dramatic minting errors, collector obsession, historical intrigue, and the perfect state of preservation, you create the formula for a modern coin, reaching $59 million in value, a spectacular hypothetical treasure that represents the highest extreme of what numismatics can offer. And imagining these layers of error helps collectors learn what to look for in their own coins, because many of the most valuable finds in U.S. history came from simple discoveries in circulation, from people who kept an eye open for unusual strikes, odd metal tones, ghostly doubled images, incomplete edges, missing details in the torch, or Roosevelt's hair, off-center designs where the rim becomes uneven, and anything else that breaks the pattern of what a normal dime should look like. So while the legendary $59 million 1996 P dime may represent the extreme end of the spectrum, its story inspires people to search, collect, study. Next, 1997 P 10-cent piece could suddenly be rumored to carry a mind-shattering price tag of $36 million. Then settle in, because this deep exploration is going to take you through every possibility, every error, every minting slip, and every strange circumstance that collectors believe might transform an everyday coin into an object of priceless fascination. And the journey begins right here, as we welcome all of you who are passionate about rare coins, hidden treasures, unexpected riches, and the incredible stories behind the smallest pieces of metal that can sometimes alter a person's entire life. And today's topic, the 1997p dime supposedly worth $36 million, is exactly that kind of story, one wrapped in layers of speculation, misunderstood errors, accidental mint anomalies, production malfunctions, experimental planchets, die deterioration, off-metal mysteries, and the occasional urban legend that somehow turns into a global sensation thanks to collectors who notice details others overlook. And as we dive deeper into this single coin's rise into the realm of astronomical value, we uncover a chain of possibilities that begins with the Philadelphia Mint's production environment in the late 1990s, a period in which the Mint was handling massive workloads, striking billions of coins each year, and occasionally letting unexpected mistakes slip through. And when you have a year like 1997, which wasn't famous for rare dimes at first glance, the idea that something extraordinary could have happened becomes incredibly tantalizing, because million-dollar coins almost always begin as ordinary coins that experience something abnormal at the very beginning of their creation, something so subtle or so dramatic that the minting process imprinted a permanent, unmistakable deviation from the norm, turning an otherwise common 10-cent piece into a treasure that collectors would battle over at auctions, museums, and private sales. And the 1997p dime, rumored at $36 million, is believed by some enthusiasts to be one of these miraculous survivors, a coin that somehow escaped the rigid quality checks at the Mint and ended up with a rare set of features that no other known dime from the same year exhibits, inspiring a combination of curiosity, debate, and wild speculation. So let's break down the long list of potential errors and mistakes whose existence or theoretical possibility gives rise to this incredible valuation, starting with the ever-iconic off-metal strike, because if the 1997p dime was accidentally struck on a foreign planchet or on a leftover blank from another coin denomination, like a cent, nickel, or even a quarter-stock experiment, the resulting piece would show anomalies in weight, thickness, coloration, and edge structure. And such an error could turn a 10-cent coin into a multimillion-dollar treasure. And collectors know that the Philadelphia Mint during the 1990s occasionally dealt with experimental stock, sometimes testing compositions for durability, electrical conductivity, and long-term wear. So if this dime was struck on an alloy never meant for public circulation, the rarity level would immediately skyrocket, because experimental planchet errors from the 1990s are among the hardest to find and often bring unbelievable prices. And beyond the alloy mystery comes the possibility of a double denomination strike, one of the rarest and most spectacular mistakes ever seen in U.S. coinage, where a coin blank is first struck as one denomination and then mistakenly run through the press of another denomination. So imagine a coin bearing features of both a dime and a cent, or both a dime and a nickel, a hybrid coin displaying overlapping designs from two entirely separate systems. And if a 1997p dime like this exists, its uniqueness would make its value almost impossible to estimate, with some collectors easily pushing the speculation into eight-figure territory, because something that exists in only one known example is essentially priceless. And the idea of a double denomination 1997p dime is often included in discussions around the $36 million valuation, not because one has been confirmed, but because the minting environment of the period absolutely allowed for the slim but real possibility of such a mistake escaping into circulation. And then we move into the provocative territory of die errors, which are the subtle shaping defects that occur when the engraved steel tools used to strike the coin begin to wear down, crack, distort, or misalign, producing dimes with doubled lettering, shifted profiles, missing elements, distorted rims, ghost images, or dramatic die cracks that snake across the metal. And while many die cracks are small, harmless, and common, An enormous die break forming a retained or full cut on a 1997p dime would be breathtakingly rare, especially if it severely affected the portrait of Roosevelt, or the torch, branch, and olive design on the reverse, and if the cut was massive, dramatic, and located in a high-visibility part of the coin. This alone could attract enough attention to drive values through the roof, not necessarily into the millions, but high enough that speculative storytelling takes over. And we know how coin collecting communities often take even a whisper of a dramatic error and turn it into legend through forums, auction rumors, and private collector tales passed from one enthusiast to another. And this is how many coin myths are born. But even myths can sometimes lead to real discoveries, because the mint did indeed produce dramatic die breaks, misaligned strikes, and partially missing motifs throughout different years. So the idea that a 1997p dime exists with some massive structural flaw is not entirely unreasonable. And then there's the possibility of a broad strike or off-center strike so extreme that the design is warped far beyond the normal production standards, because the more dramatic the distortion, the higher the value. And if the coin was struck significantly off-center with complete or nearly complete design elements showing in the blank crescent area, the rarity would be incredible, especially if the alignment produced a distinctive visual configuration never before documented, and collectors value originality above almost anything else, which works perfectly with error coins since each error is inherently unique, and getting an error so dramatic that it becomes the only known example for that year and mint can push valuations into the extraordinary range. And then we must explore the possibility of a strike-through error where an object like grease, cloth fibers, metal shavings, or even a misaligned feeder finger interferes between the die and the planchet during the strike, leaving behind a one-of-a-kind indentation or missing design element that cannot be replicated. And while grease-filled die errors are somewhat common, dramatic foreign object strike-through errors are exceedingly rare, and if the object left a major and unmistakable indentation in an area like Roosevelt's face or the flame of the torch, the coin would instantly attract collectors seeking singular historical minting anomalies. And then arrives the theory of a mule error, one of the rarest mistakes a mint can produce, where the obverse die of one denomination is accidentally paired with the reverse die of another denomination, producing a coin with mismatched sides that legally should never exist. And mule coins often sell for hundreds of thousands or even millions because they represent fundamental mistakes in minting logic. And while no official mule pairing involving a 1997p dime has ever been confirmed, some enthusiasts speculate that if one did exist, especially one that paired the dime obverse with an incorrect reverse such as a quarter reverse or an experimental foreign die, the value would become astronomical, easily supporting the rumor of a $36 million price tag, because mule errors are so rare they can become priceless artifacts overnight. And then we get into the mysterious domain of misplanchet thickness errors, where the blank used to strike the coin was either too thick or too thin, producing a dramatic difference in weight and rim definition. And if the 1997p dime in question weighed far more than a normal dime, or significantly less, and if that variance couldn't be explained by wear or tampering, collectors would flock to it as a spectacular example of manufacturing failure. And then we have the possibility that the coin displays a highly unusual combination of multiple errors layered on top of each other, such as being off-center. Next, 1983D dime, a coin that many believe could be worth an astonishing $16 million due to extremely rare and dramatic mint errors, strange production anomalies, and the mysterious possibilities surrounding how such an ordinary-looking Denver-minted dime could end up being valued so highly. And as we move forward in this deep exploration, you'll understand why this date and mint mark combination has become one of the most talked about pieces of modern pocket change, why collectors continue searching for every surviving example, and what kinds of unusual mistakes, metal abnormalities, and striking inconsistencies might turn an everyday 10-cent coin into something capable of shocking the numismatic world and transforming someone's life. Because the story of the 1983 D dime is tied not only to the technical issues that occurred at the Denver Mint during that early 1980s period, but also to the way minting machines sometimes malfunction in unpredictable ways, creating coins that were never supposed to exist in the first place, and which slip into circulation unnoticed until decades later a keen-eyed collector suddenly recognizes a distortion, a misplaced mint mark, a double device, a planchet flaw, or an unusual metal tone that instantly hints at rarity. And when we talk about the 1983 D dime specifically, we're dealing with a year known for a variety of production quirks, including the occasional use of improperly annealed planchets, dies that weren't replaced in time, and produced weakly struck or distorted images, off-center strikes caused by misaligned dies, broad strikes due to collar malfunctions, and possible transitional or wrong planchet strikes where a dime might accidentally be struck on metal intended for a different denomination. And even though many of these errors exist on other dates, the 1983 D has gained a reputation for producing some of the most extreme and intriguing versions of them, which is where the speculation about multi-million-dollar valuations comes from, because in the world of error collecting, rarity and drama are everything, and a single spectacular coin with a never-before-seen error can sell for enormous sums because collectors are willing to pay far more for something that is truly one of a kind, especially if it comes from a year or mint known for interesting mistakes. And the Denver Mint in the early 1980s certainly qualifies, since this was a time when machinery was being pushed hard to meet rising production demands, and occasional inconsistencies slipped through the cracks, leading to coins with odd shapes, strange features, and unexplained indentations. And when you think about the 1983 D dime potentially reaching $16 million, you have to consider what type of error could possibly justify such a breathtaking figure. And the list includes dramatic double strikes where the coin is struck once, pops out slightly, and gets struck again at a different angle, creating a surreal overlapping image that collectors love, or off-center strikes so severe that half of the design is missing while the mint mark remains visible, making the error both visually striking and attributable to a specific mint and year, as well as rare varieties where the planchet itself was the wrong composition entirely, such as a dime struck on a copper planchet, a foreign coin planchet, or even a leftover planchet from a different denomination, which has happened before in U.S. mint history and has produced coins worth immense money. And then there are the exceptional die errors, like extreme die cracks that look like lightning bolts tearing across the surface of the coin, die breaks that result in raised blobs of metal known as cut errors, and rotational misalignments where the front and back of the coin don't match orientation, all of which can contribute to tremendous value, especially when the error is severe and well preserved. Which brings us to the second major reason the 1983 D dime is so heavily discussed, and that is the fact that most of these potential errors would have circulated for years undetected, making surviving high-grade examples exceedingly rare because dimes move fast through commerce, wear quickly, and often disappear into jars, drawers, laundromat machines, and parking meters where their details fade long before any collector has a chance to examine them. So if a spectacular error from 1983 D did survive in mint state condition, it would be extraordinarily scarce. And scarcity is the fuel that drives high-stakes bidding wars at major auctions. And although the idea of a $16 million dime sounds unbelievable to the average person, collectors know that the value of a coin is determined by demand, rarity, and the severity of the error. And history has shown that the coin market can explode with excitement when something unprecedented appears. Just like the famous copper planchet 1943 Lincoln Cent, the 1913 Liberty Nickel, or the dramatic off-metal errors from the last few decades that sold at auction for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. So it isn't impossible that a one-of-a-kind 1983 D dime could theoretically command a shocking price if the right combination of rarity and error severity came together. And when we imagine what sorts of characteristics such a coin might have, we think about errors like a double denomination strike where a dime is accidentally struck on top of another coin's already existing design, creating two denominations merged into one, or a full brockage where the design is mirrored and deeply impressed due to a previously struck coin sticking to the die, or even a unique experimental planchet error where the metal alloy is wrong, producing a completely different color or weight which would instantly signal something unusual. And collectors pay enormous attention to weight differences because they often reveal hidden errors that aren't visible to the naked eye. And a 1983 dime struck on a thicker or thinner planchet or on a metal intended for another denomination could easily become a headline-making discovery. And beyond the physical errors themselves, there is also the mystique of the year 1983 in numismatics, because many coins from the early 1980s were made during a time when planchet suppliers were adjusting to new production techniques and alloys, resulting in occasional irregularities. And the Denver Mint in particular produced some famously strange coins during that decade, with certain error specialists arguing that unrecorded experimental testing may have occurred, leaving behind accidental anomalies that entered circulation. And if such a coin from 1983 exists today with dramatic features that no one has ever seen before, it could trigger a frenzy of buying interest powerful enough to push the price into the millions. Not because the face value is important, but because collectors see these pieces as artifacts of minting history, almost like rare, misprinted books or paintings with accidental features that make them one of a kind. And the fascinating part about the 1983 dime is that most people who handled these coins over the years never thought twice about them. So the idea that someone might have an extraordinary treasure sitting in a small jar at home or hidden inside some old pocket change tray is not far-fetched, especially when we consider that many famous era coins were discovered by complete accident, found by people who had no idea what they were holding but simply noticed something strange about the feel, weight, or design of the coin. And that's exactly why collectors today still search through rolls of dimes, examine their old jars of change, and inspect every Denver minted dime from the early 80s with a magnifying glass, hoping to find the elusive example that has sparked so much speculation, because the possibility alone makes the search worthwhile. And the more we study how errors occur, the more we understand how unpredictable the minting process can be, and that unpredictability is what creates the thrilling possibility that a 1983 dime with a mind-blowing error could have survived unnoticed for decades, waiting for the right moment to be discovered and potentially valued at a level that seems impossible. But in the world of rare coins, impossible things happen all the time, and the combination of rarity, mystery, extreme error types, Denver Mint production quirks, surviving condition, and collector demand all feed into the legend of the $16 million 1983 dime, reminding us that even the smallest coins can hold enormous secrets, and that the next great numismatic discovery could be sitting right in someone's pocket at this very moment. Next, 1997 at the Philadelphia Mint, but turns into a jaw-dropping tale of hidden value, rare mistakes, and the kind of unexpected fortune that has collectors and enthusiasts everywhere checking their pockets, their old jars, and even the dusty boxes tucked away in attics. Because today we're exploring how a seemingly normal 1997 dime could be worth an astonishing $25 million due to a set of rare, unusual, and extremely valuable mint errors that have turned this small piece of pocket change into a treasure that collectors dream of discovering. And as we begin this journey, imagine the excitement of realizing that a coin you've seen hundreds of times throughout your life might, in a rare and specific form, carry a value so high that it stops conversations, shocks even professional numismatists, and becomes the center of speculative attention around the world. So let's unravel the possibilities, the mistakes, the minting mishaps, and the extraordinary circumstances that could make a 1997 dime reach such an astonishing price, starting with the understanding that the Philadelphia Mint in the late 1990s was producing billions of coins annually, and with high-volume production comes the higher chance for anomalies to slip through the cracks, And even though quality control was strong, perfection isn't always achievable when machines, dies, planchets, and rapid-fire striking mechanisms are involved, which means sometimes the perfect storm of errors comes together to create a one-of-a-kind rarity that collectors will pay enormous sums for. And when we talk about a dime reaching the realm of $25 million, we aren't referring to a normal circulation-grade coin, because this extraordinary value stems from extremely specific, incredibly scarce, and nearly impossible combinations of errors such as transitional planchet issues, double strike misalignments, off-metal features, experimental composition accidents, and even the possibility of a mismatched die scenario where a dime receives impressions from incompatible dies or is struck on a blank intended for an entirely different denomination, leading some experts to theorize that if a 1997p dime were accidentally struck on a gold planchet or a foreign coin blank, it could create a unique specimen capable of fetching a price so high that it enters the territory of elite auction pieces. Those once-in-a-lifetime coins that gain fame not only for their physical rarity, but for the lore surrounding them. And when we look at what makes 1997 dimes interesting to begin with, it's important to remember that this was a decade of significant coin production, meaning any unusual error that made it into circulation was incredibly unlikely to be repeated, and rarity in the coin world is driven not just by age or metal content, but by the improbability of duplication. So the 1997p dime in question becomes valuable because it is believed to have one of the most unusual combinations of mistakes ever documented or speculated, including the possibility of a broad strike error where the rim and edge never properly formed, which could be paired with an off-center strike that reveals missing elements of the design, or perhaps a double die obverse error where Roosevelt's portrait shows doubling around the nose, eye, or mouth, and the word liberty appears slightly shadowed, giving the coin that unmistakable doubled appearance that collectors crave. And when this doubling is strong and clear, with no signs of post-mint damage, it transforms the coin into a desirable error that can exponentially increase in value. But when you combine this with additional minting mishaps, such as an improperly annealed planchet that gives the dime a darker, unusual tone, or a split plating error revealing layers beneath the surface, the coin becomes even more fascinating, because it starts presenting features that even seasoned collectors might have trouble categorizing, and any coin that challenges classification becomes more desirable because it stands out. And when a coin stands out, attention follows, demand rises, competition increases, and prices soar. And this is where we enter the world of multi-million-dollar valuations, because collectors don't just pay for the metal or the face value, they pay for history, anomalies, stories, and the rarity that comes from knowing that no other example exists with the same characteristics. But what makes the 1997p dime even more intriguing is the possibility of a mule error, something so rare that when a mule coin appears at auction, its value skyrockets beyond imagination. And a mule occurs when a coin is struck with dies that were never meant to go together, like a dime struck with a quarter reverse or a different denomination pairing that slipped through unnoticed. And although such a mule from the 1997p dime series has never been publicly confirmed, the mere possibility of its existence fuels rumors, discussions, and hypothetical valuations, because if such a mule were ever authenticated, its value could instantly leap into tens of millions due to unmatched rarity. And then we consider off-metal strikes, where a dime might accidentally be struck on a copper planchet, a nickel planchet, or even an experimental test metal left inside mint machinery, and these coins, when verified, can become some of the most valuable modern rarities ever discovered. So imagine a 1997p dime that exhibits weight, thickness, color, or composition completely different from the standard copper-nickel clad structure, and if such a coin demonstrated extraordinary peculiarity, like an unusual golden hue combined with abnormal weight and thickness, it could become a legend in numismatic circles, especially if metallurgical tests revealed a composition mistake that occurred only once during that production year, making the coin a truly one-of-a-kind specimen worth millions. And when we talk about mistakes that drive prices into the stratosphere, we also need to consider die break errors, known as cut errors, where portions of the die crack and leave raised blobs of metal on the finished coin. And while small die cracks are more common and not extremely valuable, a massive, dramatic, visually striking die break that alters the face or reverse of the coin in a dramatic way can make a coin incredibly desirable because it is visually unique and instantly recognizable. And if a 1997 P dime exhibited one of the largest known die breaks ever recorded for its series, and if that error aligned with other mistakes like off-center striking or double die features, collectors could view it as a once-in-history minting accident that merges multiple rare elements into one extraordinary coin. And such a perfect storm could be exactly what pushes its hypothetical value to $25 million or more, especially in an auction setting where wealthy private collectors compete, driving the price upward with every bid. And then we go deeper into the realm of possibilities, imagining that the coin might have been struck during a transitional phase where the mint was testing new machinery, replacing old dies, or adjusting settings, and during such transitions, mistakes become more plausible, including die polish lines that streak across the face of the coin, creating a shimmering effect that makes the surface look different from typical circulation coins. And if these polish lines intersect important areas, like the date or mint mark, altering their shape in unusual ways, the coin becomes even more interesting, and many collectors are drawn to these visually distinctive traits because they offer a fingerprint of the moment in which the error occurred, like a snapshot of minting history preserved in metal. And when we consider the value of uniqueness, it's not uncommon for coins with a single defining feature to reach values exceeding expectations. But when a coin possesses not just one, but multiple extraordinary features, such as a possible off-metal strike, a dramatic die break, strong doubling in the obverse, and proper planchet preparation, and possibly even slight rotation between the obverse and reverse alignments, the result is a coin so strange, so impossible to replicate, and so undeniably rare that collectors view it as a historical artifact rather than a simple currency piece. And in that world, $25 million becomes not just a price tag, but a representation of the coin's status as an irreplaceable marvel. And then we consider the narrative aspect, because stories sell, and when a coin acquires a legend around it, interest grows even more. And the 1997 P dime rumored to be worth millions likely has a backstory involving an accidental discovery, perhaps a coin found unexpectedly in change, or uncovered during a routine examination by a collector. Last, 2005 P dime that some collectors believe could be worth as much as $11 million due to the rare combination of errors, minting anomalies, striking mistakes, and mysterious production circumstances that make this particular coin one of the most talked about modern dimes in the collecting world. And as we take you on this journey, we'll uncover the details of how a simple Roosevelt dime minted in Philadelphia could reach such a jaw-dropping valuation, not because of precious metals or extremely low mintage, but because of the hidden accidents, unintentional mechanical slips, dramatic die issues, planchet defects, alignment mishaps, and striking irregularities that elevate it far beyond face value and push it into legendary status among error coin enthusiasts who are always on the hunt for that one rare piece that changes everything. And to understand why the 2005 P dime has become such a phenomenon, we need to explore the way modern coin production works, especially in high-volume years, when the U.S. Mint was producing millions upon millions of coins at rapid speed, often pushing machinery to its limits. And when machines work continuously under high pressure, even slight vibrations or small misalignments can trigger a chain of errors that might go undetected before the coins are bagged, boxed, and sent out into circulation. So imagine the powerful coin presses at the Philadelphia Mint striking thousands of dimes per minute, and suddenly a tiny shift occurs. Maybe a die becomes loose, maybe a planchet is improperly cut, maybe grease fills parts of the die, maybe a feeder mechanism slips, and before the mint workers even realize it, several unusual coins are struck, each carrying a unique defect, each carrying a story engraved into the metal, each becoming a potential future treasure. And that is where the 2005p dime's legend begins, with whispers of off-center strikes where the design is shifted so far that parts of the lettering vanish or spread unevenly across the surface, and collectors love these because they are dramatic, easy to spot and rare when extreme. And then, there are the misaligned die strikes where one die sits slightly off its correct position, producing an odd appearance where one side may look rotated or stretched relative to the other. And these kinds of errors, when significant and well preserved, can drastically increase a coin's value. But the 2005p dime is not just about one type of error, because the rumors and reports describe a combination of several high-level mistakes, such as double strikes where the coin is hit twice by the dies, and the second strike creates a shadow effect or overlapping elements in the portrait and lettering, giving the dime an unmistakable double profile. And then, there are die cracks that form when the die itself develops fractures under extreme pressure, leaving raised lines across the coin that look like lightning bolts or branching veins, and collectors eagerly seek coins with long, dramatic cracks because they represent moments when the mint's equipment was at the edge of failure, freezing that moment in time on the coin's surface. And some 2005p dimes reportedly show retained cut errors, where pieces of a breaking die remain attached long enough to leave odd blobs or missing sections on the coin, often near the rim or portrait outline, giving the piece a unique and irregular shape that collectors consider highly desirable. And beyond these dramatic errors, there are also whispers of rare planchet flaws, where the blank metal disc is defective before it even reaches the striking chamber, meaning the coin might have laminations where the surface metal peels, flakes or separates in a way that exposes lower layers, creating an unmistakable texture that shows immediately something went wrong long before the design was pressed. And coins with deep or wide lamination errors can be incredibly valuable, especially when they occur on modern issues that usually undergo stricter quality control, because collectors know how uncommon these events truly are. And then, there are the extreme die fill errors where grease or debris clogs parts of the design, causing missing letters or faint details that make the coin appear partially blank, almost ghost-like. And on a 2005p dime, this can lead to missing segments of the date, mint mark, or inscriptions, which fascinates collectors who look for these eerie, partially vanished details. But the most intense interest comes from rumors of hybrid or transitional errors, rare situations where planchets intended for one denomination or metal composition accidentally get struck with the dies of another denomination, creating a once-in-a-lifetime minting accident. And although such errors are extremely rare, even the possibility that a 2005p dime might have been struck on an unintended planchet, like a foreign coin blank or a leftover material from another batch, sends shockwaves through the hobby, because such mistakes can command extraordinary prices when authenticated, sometimes reaching millions due to their sheer impossibility. And when collectors imagine a 2005p dime struck on a foreign planchet that slipped into the production line, perhaps lighter or heavier than a standard dime, perhaps slightly off in color or thickness, they begin to understand how a coin could jump from 10 cents to $11 million in value. Because rarity in the error coin world is not just about how many exist, but about how impossible the circumstances seem. And another factor that elevates the mythical value of the 2005p dime is the condition of the surviving examples, because if one of these rare errors somehow escaped into circulation but remained in pristine condition with sharp details, untouched surfaces, and full mint luster, it becomes exponentially more valuable, especially if it grades at the top of the scale used by professional grading companies. And the combination of a serious mint error and extremely high grade is often what pushes the price of a coin into the millions. And as collectors speculate that only one or two extreme error 2005p dimes may exist, the potential value skyrockets due to the fundamental rule of supply and demand, because when only a single specimen is known, collectors with deep pockets will battle fiercely to obtain it, both for prestige and for the chance to own a piece of minting history that may never appear again, and beyond. The errors themselves, the story of how such a coin could have slipped through the mint unnoticed, adds another layer of mystery, because in 2005 the mint was running high-capacity operations producing huge quantities of coins for national circulation, meaning the tiniest oversight could allow a handful of dramatic errors to escape detection. And the thought that someone somewhere might have found one of these extraordinary pieces in their change or in an old jar only deepens the fascination, creating an emotional connection to the search and pushing the hype higher as collectors imagine themselves discovering a life-changing treasure in the most ordinary circumstances. And this sense of possibility, this thrill of the unknown, is part of what drives coin collecting as a hobby. Because the idea that something as small and everyday as a single dime could hide a story worth millions inspires people to look more closely at the coins they handle every day, paying attention to details, studying mint marks, reading about die varieties, and learning the complex world of mint errors. And as this awareness spreads, the legend of the 2005p dime grows stronger, with collectors speculating about who might hold such a piece, whether more are out there waiting to be discovered, and whether a major auction house might one day unveil one to the world with an opening estimate in the tens of millions. And the mere possibility fuels excitement, because error coins have a long history of shocking auction results when rare combinations of mistakes appear. So it's not unreasonable for collectors to imagine that a perfect storm of errors on a modern dime could command a record-breaking price. And the more dramatic the story behind it, the more attention it receives, turning the 2005p dime into a subject of fascination, speculation, and intense curiosity among coin enthusiasts who dream of finding one in their possession, making it a true phenomenon in the world of modern numismatics. And as we reach the end of this deep exploration into what makes the 2005p dime so special, and why some believe it could be worth $11 million, remember that the world of coin collecting is full of surprises.